Please give a round of applause to Mubashira and Amani. And we're going to be talking about Muslim women in the media, changing the script.
Hello, assalamu alaikum, everyone. I hope you had a great lunch, your stomachs are full, you're feeling refreshed, because we are going to get right into it. My name is Mubashira Farooqi. I am the founder and host of Color Me PR podcast, which I founded in 2020 to help amplify the voices and representation of diverse women in media, marketing, and communications industries. I'm also a senior consultant and global DE&I consultant at Fleischman Hillard High Road. And last year, I had the incredible honor of being an ambassador for the Can Diversity Collective. Adrienne brought myself and about 25 other young people to Cannes Lions to be part of this incredible global festival and experience what it is like to be here. And this year, I decided I need to come back and be part of the team helping to run the event this year. So I had the huge honor of supporting Adrienne and the team at Cannes Lions again this year. So I want to begin just again by thanking Adrienne for creating this space for us. You know, as a visible Muslim woman, I feel like there isn't a ton of representation yet for us at Cannes Lions, and to have this stage is an incredible opportunity, one which I do not take lightly. And so I'd like to introduce the incredible guest that I'll be inviting up shortly. We will be talking about Muslim women in media and how we are changing the script. So I'd like to welcome to the stage a critically acclaimed author, activist, and cultural innovator. She's a social media pioneer who founded MuslimGirl.com, the award-winning media company championing Muslim women's voices in today's society. Hailed as a media titan by the New York Times, she grew her teen blog to become the first Muslim-owned company to land on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list. She created Muslim Women's Day, the annual international media day, focusing on Muslim stories with some of the world's most influential partners, including Apple, Spotify, Meta, and TikTok. Her book, Muslim Girl, A Coming of Age, is a two-time editor's pick on the New York Times bestsellers list. She was named one of CNN's 25 most influential American Muslims and was one of the first hijabi Muslim women to speak on the Cannes Lions stage. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the stage Amani.
Wow, what a welcome. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you all for coming out on what we consider to be the bonus extra credit day at Cannes Lions on a beautiful Friday. I hope everyone has amazing plans lined up for tonight and will be joining us at the closing party. But Mubashira, thank you so much for the warm welcome. So happy to be here again.
Of course, of course. And it's hard to believe we met only a year ago, and we actually met here at Cannes Lions. And we immediately felt connected because we don't see a ton of hijabi Muslim women walking around Cannes this time of year. But that's something that I think both of us are committed to changing. And so I'm so happy to have you here and that we're able to now, a year later, have this conversation on the Inkwell Beach stage. So I know that you've been coming to Cannes Lions for quite a few years now, and I'd love to know just how you feel like your experience has changed over the past couple of years, because for me, being on Inkwell Beach, I feel like this is a very safe space, a very unique space that we don't experience across the Croisette. So tell me about how you feel representation has changed over the last couple of years at Cannes.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I had to try to count it out a few times. I think this is my 4th or 5th Cannes Lions, and I've been coming at it from every angle, from main stage speaker to jury member to attendee to the wonderful talks. And one thing that's definitely very noticeable since the beginning, since I started coming here around 23 years old, is that diversity has definitely become a mainstay when it comes to the themes that we address and that we talk about here. But in terms of the voices that we hear from, I can't say that we have seen such a radical difference yet. I think this is probably the closest that we're getting to it, is having Inkwell Beach and such an incredibly diverse program here. But the goal is definitely to have more integration into the main program and see more of our voices, more of our faces represented, and more of that visibility, because everyone is talking about us, and we need to be the ones leading that conversation.
Absolutely. And that's another thing I feel you and I can connect on, is that we've used the platforms that we've created when we felt like there weren't those opportunities already existing. For me, I created Color Me PR podcast in an industry where I felt like Muslim women's voices or diverse women's voices were not represented. And it was incredibly important to me that the next person that comes in after me doesn't experience that same challenge. I wanted to make sure, because I came into the industry feeling like there was no one else like me, but that wasn't the case. They were there, they just didn't have the platform to share their voices. And that's why sharing, creating these stages is so essential, because those voices are there, they just need that platform. And I wonder if it was a similar experience for you with Muslim Girl. I mean, of course, it's become an incredible entity now, but what was the origin of that for you?
I mean, I'll be honest, when I started Muslim Girl, I started it very selfishly, because I didn't have a space. I couldn't find a community where I was growing up. I'm born and raised in Jersey. Being a Jersey girl is the first identity that I've ever attached myself to. And I grew up in a very homogenous hometown. So obviously not finding community IRL, I did what any young person would do, which is I went on social media. I used technology to create a space. And I say that it was very selfishly, because not only was I not seeing a representation or a reflection of myself and my friends in the media around us, but also I didn't have friends that were from my background. I knew that there were very unique experiences that we were having growing up in a post 9/11 era. And the very few online spaces that were available to Muslims were, of course, mixed gender. So there were always men's voices dominating the women's, and they felt very irrelevant to the modern issues impacting us. Like, they were so focused on, like, can a Muslim woman wear nail polish? What's the proper way for her to wear her hijab? And things that were just completely irrelevant to the real life or death situations that we were experiencing with Islamophobia. For me, it was extreme bullying growing up. It was a lot of confusion about growing up as the new generation with one foot in two cultures. I was born and raised in the States. My parents are immigrants and refugees. And I was leading this modern lifestyle while still wanting to subscribe to my Islamic faith and my cultural identity, but I didn't know how. And I knew I couldn't be the only one facing those questions. And I didn't find other girls from my background that I could connect with and share those experiences with. So I was hoping, if you build it, they will come. That Muslim Girl, if I put it out there, I could find that generation of Muslim girls, and we can all come together and tell our stories on our own terms.
I love that. I love that. And I feel like the same thing with my podcast. I definitely started it a little bit selfishly in that I just wanted to build community, but that community has become so central to me. Like, it feels like a group of people that are dedicated to uplifting each other versus just trying to find your own path. You have a whole community to work with. And so tell me about the Muslim Girl journey. How has it grown, and where do you feel it is today? How do you feel like it contributes to the conversation in media today?
I mean, when I started Muslim Girl when I was a teenager, I don't even think that I had an idea of where it would reach today. It's definitely become much more than a teen blog and a company much bigger than me now. But I am very proud that Muslim Girl has become one of the most influential forces in rebranding the way that we understand our generation of Muslims, especially in Western societies, from all of the high-level partnerships that we have across the board that with media partners, including one of our partners here at Cannes Lions, Getty Images, to really make sure that we have visual representation that changes the way that people perceive us. So, like, for example, for the longest time, whenever I did a speaking engagement, the way that I would open it up is I would invite the audience to whip out their cell phones and open up Google image search and type in Muslim women and see what pops up. And for the longest time, it was always walls of search results of the same image over and over of these battered-looking Muslim women hidden behind black face veils. You could only see their eyes, looking depressed, looking victimized. And at one point, it occurred to me, why is this still a thing? Like, we need to change this. So our partnership with Getty Images came about very organically, where we created a whole resource of visuals through the Muslim woman's lens of how we represent ourselves more authentically in our own way. And especially in today's digital media era, visuals are everything, right? The way that we connect and understand with other communities is all online now. And through the Muslim Women's Day campaign, now with high-level partners across the board, like you mentioned, partnered with every social media platform, we pledge one day during Women's History Month every year to push Muslim stories in a positive light. And it's now become the biggest media day where our voices are amplified. People get access to our narratives and highlight work that we're doing that they don't get to see anywhere else. And I would have to say that right now, with what's trending, I'm super proud of the fact that Muslim Girl also worked with Mattel to pitch the first hijabi Barbie. That was based off of one of my good friends, Ibtihaj Muhammad. And we need more. I think it's time for us to see more diversity in even the way that Muslim women are represented. One Barbie is not enough. So just going through all these different industries and breaking into spaces in different unique ways to just challenge people's perception and stereotypes of who we are, that's the key. And I think that's what has allowed Muslim Girl to grow into the force that it's become today. Oh no, Islamophobia.
I think we ran the batteries out on that one. I was just gonna say there's so much intersectionality, right? And for us being, second, third generation kids, like especially for us, we experience not feeling like we're a complete fit with necessarily one culture, but then also, we're women, but then we're also Muslim, and then we're also, there's so many layers to this experience that those 3 walls of images that we see in that Google search is not enough, right? And so that's the thing that I really appreciate about the conversation that we're having today, is because even you and I will have so many different interpretations of, our faith or how we identify as Muslim women, but that doesn't change the fact that we are Muslim women and we deserve the same platform and stage. So I absolutely agree. And just thinking about this intersectionality, it reminds me of some of my favorite representations of Muslim women that I've seen recently. And I think for me, one of them has been Miss Marvel. So I don't know if anyone's seen the show. Big fan. Thank you. And it's a great example, especially for our young people who can...
So brown girl from Jersey City, right?
Yeah.
So like...
Exactly.
Yeah.
So did they get your notes?
What's that?
Did they take your notes? Because
we had to share some notes on that experience. Exactly. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I love Miss Marvel.
Exactly. And I come from a Pakistani background, so for me to see elements of my culture and my faith, but then also I'm from Canada, but similar-ish culture to the US, I'd say. See all those things come together in one place was so impactful, and to know that I may not have grown up with that, but that the future generations will is absolutely incredible. So definitely more different types of Muslim Barbies would be incredible. So I look forward to that.
I mean, also with Miss Marvel, obviously absolute breakthrough of a program. Muslim Girl became the first Muslim media company to ever cover a Marvel red carpet when we covered their premiere. Wow. So it kind of shows that when we have projects that are by us and for us, it opens the doors wide open in so many different ways. And it's why it's so crucial that when those projects happen, like we just saw with The Little Mermaid, for example, we need to be going out there and supporting them in droves, because when they see that there's that result, then it's only going to result in more funding for us, more opportunities, more productions, more projects, and we need to prove that point over and over again.
Absolutely. And when I think about what we here at Cannes Lions as creatives, as storytellers, what we need to think about when it comes to representation of Muslim women, it is, again, that intersectionality piece for me, right? the representation of a Muslim woman isn't just one that looks like me, or that looks like Malala, or that looks like a woman in a black niqab. There are so many different versions of that, and I think that's something we need to be considering as storytellers.
Absolutely.
So who are some of your favorite Muslim representations of women?
Ooh. Well, I think that I have to kick it off with one of our clients, We Are Lady Parts at Peacock. They have done such an amazing job. It's a show based on a Muslim women's rock band. So the story is very much, it has its own plot line. And I think the representation that we're really pushing for is where our characters don't rest on our identities as being their main plot line, but rather that they have their own lives, they have multidimensional characters that just so happen to be Muslims. I'm also a huge fan of what we did with the Princess Jasmine story for the Aladdin live action remake.
Yeah.
That was a project that I was personally involved in, and for anyone that saw that movie, we took Princess Jasmine from being through the white male gaze, which is something that I didn't realize until I became a grown adult. I always loved Princess Jasmine. She was the only representation I ever had growing up, until you get a little older and you realize, oh, they actually had her in a red belly dancing outfit and chains, and that it was a very male gaze representation of who we are. Being able to work on that project and really reimagine her story of her being empowered to use her voice by the end of the film, I think was a really powerful, full circle moment.
I love that. That's really exciting, and I hope we see more of this represented in our Cannes Lions submissions too. So in the coming years, I know you were at the Roger Hatchwell Academy as well earlier today. How do you feel like we can incorporate more Muslim representation in what we're seeing on these international stages? I mean, we're having this conversation today, and I know you, again, were one of the very first hijabi Muslim women to speak on the Cannes Lions stage, but why do you think it's so important for us to have these spaces, and what can we do to encourage more of this, or what can you all do to encourage?
I mean, isn't that crazy that Cannes Lions has been around for 70 years? And it took that long to have a hijabi woman go on the main stage. And I think that really proves the point of what's the problem here. We need to listen to communities, right? It can't just be the same teams that are hand selecting who gets to have a platform, who gets to be heard. We need to actually consult the communities that we want to represent and hear from them directly of who they want to see, who needs to have that platform, who deserves the spotlight, and really reflect programs based on those requests, based on those ideas. But they need to be involved in the process from the very beginning. It doesn't make sense to attempt to serve a community without involving that community in the decision making. And when it comes to the main stage, as we all know, with the main stage speakers, there is specific funding allocated to those voices. So we need to make sure that that funding is being allocated to people of color taking the main stage as well, and people of color from many different diverse backgrounds. Inkwell Beach has been an incredible development for Cannes Lions. It's what, 1 or 2 years old now?
So this is our 5th year, actually.
Oh, it is? On the beach?
Of Inkwell Beach at Cannes, yeah.
All right, you see. Snaps for that. It's incredible and still fairly young in the context of Cannes Lions. And we need a space where we can convene like this. To me, this is my safe space. I come here, I feel seen, heard. I see my girls. I know I'm always going to run into my people here. What we don't want to see happen is the lack of integration into the main features at Cannes Lions, where we're kind of relegated to just the sidelines rather than being a focal feature. So this is a great step, but we're not done here. We need to demand more space, more energy, because we're not here to talk in silos. We all get this. We know these conversations better than anybody, but I mean, literally look at the audience. Where are the allies that should be listening to conversations like this? Where are they? It can't just be all talk. And I think that's really what the next step in the evolution is gonna look like.
Absolutely. We're bringing the allies. We'll bring them here. Amazing. I know you and I have also talked a lot about authentic representation, right? We don't want Muslim representation to just be another, box that's checked off in the list of things to include, whoever is in the background of a scene or something like that, or who's in your graphic image. We want it to be a truly deeper representation. And part of that means that we need to think about what our sources are and where the information is coming from and how authentic it is. That's why we have platforms like Muslim Girls, that it's content from young Muslim women themselves. Those are authentic voices that you can trust and that you can learn from. So, you know, you and I have talked about authenticities as a form of currency now, and in this, you know, increasingly digital age where we have AI that can completely distort realities, how important it is to have authentic sources and to be able to find those credible sources.
No, absolutely. And I think that's part of the reason why our communities have our own independent media platforms now and why they have become so vastly successful. It's why, for example, you started your own podcast. I mean, Mubashira was literally the first other hijabi that I ever encountered at Cannes Lions. And
besides Malala,
this beachside chat would not be happening if you weren't involved in the programming at the decision-making level. So we need so many more people like that, like you, doing the work behind the scenes, in front of the camera and behind it to make sure that we're being amplified and represented and continue that evolution. And it's necessary for us to have our own platforms where we do tell our own stories in our own way, because with Muslim Girl, for example, we couldn't rely on the mainstream to tell our stories. You know, for the longest time, whenever we heard about anything related to Muslim women, it was always non-Muslims and non-women doing all of the talking on our behalf. And they historically got it wrong every single time. And we see tangibly what the effects of that are on our community. It resulted in real-life foreign policies based on misinformation that ravaged Muslim women and children more than anybody in the name of our liberation. So when we are talking about topics regarding communities that are different than our own, go to the source. We can't rely on the usual suspects to be able to get that information. They're not going to tell us in our own truth. They'll never be able to tell us in our own truth until we tell them how to do that in our own way. And the only way we get that power is when we come together and we support the projects that are being led by our communities and that are being owned by our communities, and pushing those forward to the point where we are able to not go to them to tell our stories, but then they're coming to us and asking us to be involved in the conversation, or asking us to help them when it comes to us leading those conversations for them.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think you're absolutely right. For me, my podcast was a way to do that, right? Was to create an authentic place to share my experience, for me specifically as a Muslim woman in communications, right? Where we don't often hear, like I, for example, work in an agency setting, which is very, very fast-paced. How does my Muslim identity interact in that space, right? How do I exist in that space? A lot of folks don't understand that. For example, I need time in the day to take a break to pray, or you know, to adhere to my faith, and how that impacts the work that I do. So absolutely, I love the idea of creating these spaces for ourselves, and then for our allies to be able to support us in that. Well, I'd love to open it up for a bit of a Q&A, if you're open to that. So if anyone has any questions, and honestly, I think we're both pretty open books, so we'd be happy to chat and share.
Hello, my name's Ruby. I run a PR agency in the UK for the Black British experience. So I really love this. And I wanted to just ask, have you found any brands who get what you're trying to do and actually are really positive, supportive, and have come and said, yeah, we want to support, we want to give you, capital, we want to give you money for certain things, and it's not a struggle conversation? And if you have had any brands that were like that, what was it like, and what would you say for brands who want to be like that?
Ooh, I mean, I have case studies on both sides of that, girl. Like, we could talk all day about it. But in terms of brands that have been successful collaborations that I felt have been really supportive, I'm so proud of the collab that we did with Adidas Originals. So Adidas Originals tapped us to do a capsule collection that was inclusive, modest-focused. We did a few different iterations of it. It included hijabs, which was really exciting for us, that were marketed as headscarves that anybody can wear. Clearly, I'm rocking the Adidas today for that reason. And one thing that was really great was internally, we brought it up with Adidas that, look, if we're doing something catered to our community, we need to be able to give back. And so because of that, Adidas Originals pledged a monetary fund to several different minority communities and small businesses, and even included those small businesses as the location sets for our photo shoots for the commercials that were marketed worldwide in campaigns around the globe. And we also even included some of the small business owners to be part of those photo shoots for us. And those are all, you know, they've been on billboards. I got the opportunity to go to the World Cup with Adidas during the collaboration, and it was in the flagship stores across the Middle East. And it was just lovely to see, you know, that the work being done to market to the community is also behind the scenes doing something to give back as well. And I think that that's the main key component. Now, we've also worked with brands that were eager to collaborate with us so that they can get their piece of the pie from the Muslim community. And then later on down the line, you know, we would throw all of this PR behind them, a lot of creative direction, and even messaging of how to get the talking points right to address our community in a way that's meaningful. And then once they do that, you know, we had this one brand that we were working with, and as soon as we launched, soon after that, the CEO was exposed with all of these old social media posts that he was making that were anti-Muslim, anti-Arab, anti-Black. And because of that, even though that collaboration brought in probably the biggest surge of revenue that we had seen up until that point, it was necessary for us to cut ties with them because it was just completely contrary to the values that we represent. So a lot of times, unfortunately, when you're on the front lines and you're working with brands that have never worked with communities like ours before, you really have to set the bar. And sometimes that means turning down a bag if it means that the mission is more important. And I think that that's where we are in the journey right now.
Absolutely. And I'd say while we're paying attention to the big brands, it's also really important to support some of the smaller Muslim woman-owned brands. There's a ton that I could name. I know Haute Hijab is one that I believe have connected with previously.
I'm wearing them right now.
Yeah, there we go. Lyra swimwear. For me, coming to Cannes, being by the beach, I wanted to make sure I have modest swimwear that I can have. So keep an eye on some of those brands as well.
I'm Harrietta, and I'm also from London.
Up closer.
And my question is, how can the younger generation of Muslim girls also support this movement, and what could we be doing to basically push that change? And how can employers also get involved?
I feel like that's something that I've thought a lot about, especially in the last few years, and especially when I was launching my podcast. Just know how powerful your voice is. Your one singular voice has so much power to create change. When I initially launched my podcast, I thought that maybe my husband would listen to it, my parents, a friend or two here or there, and it now has a global reach with listeners from every single continent. And I have people from all different backgrounds that reach out and share how they resonate with these stories and with the conversations that we're having. So just understand that you may not know in the moment the impact that can come from you sharing your voice, but it will come. And the hardest step is always that first one, right? Of sharing your voice and feeling confident enough to share your voice on these different platforms. I'm incredibly honored to be here today on this global stage to speak, but it started with me placing an Amazon order for a podcast mic and then speaking into it. So yeah, just trust in that initial step.
What I would like to add to that is something that I heard during one of his talks. So Gary Vaynerchuk is one of our investors at Muslim Girl. And I attended one of his talks here at Cannes Lions a few days ago, and he said something that really stuck with me. He said that we used to live in an era where everyone is famous for 15 minutes, and now we live in an era where everyone is famous to 15 people. And I completely agree with that. With social media, a lot of times we play the numbers game, and one of the questions that I get the most is people asking me like, oh, I don't have that many people following me. How can I make an impact? Will anyone even care? And it's like, yes, people will care. It's called the butterfly effect. Even if you have 2 people following you, what you're sharing online is going to affect those 2 people, and those 2 people are going to affect the X amount of people that follow them and the X amount of people that follow those people, and it's exponential. It's a ripple effect. You don't know how you're going to resonate with not only your immediate community, but the community that ripples outward, and it's always important to start there. Start with your neighborhood, your immediate community, the people within your immediate social group. And I mean, that's literally how Muslim Girl started, and it grew from there. It's just building blocks, but your voice will always make a difference. And today with social media, there's absolutely no excuse. Like you have a weapon of mass destruction sitting in your pocket at all times.
Any more burning questions?
Hello guys, thank you so much for the talk. It was really, really inspiring and so lovely to meet you both and hear your stories. So my name's Laiba and I'm the first hijabi UGC creator. And basically I'm very new to the industry and I've seen a big trend of people of color and black people, especially women, being underpaid. And that's something so hard to fight, because not only now you're trying to prove your worth to these brands, which should already see it, which obviously you guys have already dealt with before, but it's also about like making sure that you're not leaving money on the table, you're being paid your worth, you're growing, etc. So how do you, what advice would you give to someone who is starting out in the industry, how to kind of compete with these people who are going to have that privilege the second they step in the room, and I'm going to have that underprivilege the second I step in the room? So many brands don't want to work with me because I wear hijab. There's so many different barriers that I've had to face so far. But my main thing is definitely now with social media, we have a lot of things like salary transparency. Creators are now opening up and talking about how they've been treated. The Tart trip recently that happened, a lot of people of color that went, they weren't treated properly. So what advice would you give to that kind of thing?
Always go where you're wanted. There's literally no reason to work with or affiliate with people that are not treating you with the respect that you deserve. As badly as we want to work with them, if they're not getting it right, we shouldn't give our power away to them. And I think that's one part of it, is there's always going to be that aspect of the imposter syndrome. Like, do I deserve this? Should I be grateful for whatever I get? And actually, at the Roger Hatchell Academy, during my talk, one of the students there asked me a question that I've been reflecting on all week. She was a young woman of color, one of the only women of color that was in that space. I think she was from Nigeria. And she asked me, when do we have the privilege to say no? And it stuck with me because, for our communities, for people that look like us, a lot of times the opportunities are scarce and you feel like you have to say yes to everything that comes your way. But my thought about that is that it's not the privilege to say no, it's the power to say no. And a lot of times, if you're being pulled into something, it's because you got something that they want. And right now, a lot of brands are eager to tap into the culture. They want that secret sauce. They want us to give them the recipe. And because of that, we do have to know what our worth is. And there's no reason for us to give it to them for free or to just lay ourselves at their feet for whatever they're offering us. It's our responsibility to set that value for them and lead the way. And also know, for my brothers and sisters in the audience, but also for the women of color here, that when you stand in your power, you are being your sister's keeper. It's not selfish. Don't let anyone make you think that you asking for what you're worth is being selfish or that you're being ungrateful, okay? When you stand in your power, you are setting the tone for all the women that are gonna walk through that door after you. So don't sell yourself short. That's what I have to say about that.
Mic drop. I can't add.
I'm very passionate about this topic. I have been through some ish in this space. I've seen it all. So that's really the lesson that I want to impart on my sisters, and it's so important. And things are changing right now very rapidly.
But it is so important because you're also setting the bar for yourself, right? You're telling yourself what you're worth when you accept certain opportunities. And if you tell yourself that you're going to take something less than what you think you're worth, that's just lowering the bar for yourself, and you can't start out like that. Starting out, you start high, you just get higher and higher. Absolutely. Awesome. Any more questions?
Hi there. I guess my question is, how would you like the non-Muslim community to help be more in your corner? How can I do that for you?
Important one.
The answer is so simple. The answer is pass the mic. Whenever you have the opportunity to, and there is a lived experience that you can't speak to, pass the mic to somebody that can. And that can look like a variety of different ways. You know, for example, in the most basic, most accessible sense, it could be you being on Twitter and seeing someone tweet about something that you helped you learn something new, and you hit retweet on it, or you send it along to people that you think it'll resonate with. It's sharing an article written by a byline from a person of color that we need to hear from. There are so many ways to be able to do that. And also, I will say that I don't think, truly in my heart, like, Muslim Girl would not have reached the level that it is at today if it weren't for our allies that were in the rooms that we hadn't yet entered, who spoke our names into those spaces, who pulled us in to have a seat at the table. And if it weren't for those allies, then it would have been so much more challenging to break through those spaces by ourselves. But it's being authentic and really showing up for people whenever you can. And I can't tell you just the impact it has. Actually, one of the examples that I shared during one of my talks earlier this week is that Getty Images partnership that I explained to you guys. That one happened because I was walking down the street one day in New York City, and I just happened to, by sheer coincidence, run into a woman that had only been an acquaintance of mine at that time, now is one of my closest friends in the industry. But she is the executive director of the Gina Davis Institute. She actually spoke here last year, and she was on her way into a Getty Images meeting. And she just like grabbed me off the street and was like, yo, Amani, like, what are you doing right now? You don't have anything? Come with me right now. Like, come into this meeting with me. And while I was in the meeting, they were like talking about all these ideas. And I just happened to blurt out, like, we need more stock photos for Muslim women showing us in a more authentic light. And immediately, right at that table, they're like, we're doing it. And I walked out with one of the biggest partnerships that we have to this day. And so there's two lessons in that, is show up for people, show up, be your sister's keeper. But also, when you are in that space, don't let imposter syndrome silence you, because it could have been so easy when the opportunity presented itself to just let the big kids do the talking and for me to just like sit there and just like not say anything. But just speaking up when that moment happens, when you do finally get your foot in the door, it can change everything. So it goes on both ends where that collaboration, that opportunity takes place.
And I really want to double down on that pass the mic piece, right? And that's why I appreciate Adrienne so much for giving us this space today, because it's exactly what she does. That's what she did with us and what she's been doing all week, does every year here on Inkwell Beach. So really important.
Hi, Courtney Jones. I'm one of the CCDC volunteers. I'm just curious, what's next? What are you guys looking forward to on each of your respective platforms for Muslim Girl and for Color Me podcast? What are you excited to talk about? What are you excited to engage with your communities with? What are you excited to bring other communities into? What can we all look forward to in the coming year, 6 months, whatever you decide?
For me, it's partnerships. Right? I understand the power of community, and I want to partner with, other Muslim women and other people of color, but I also want to partner with allies, right? A big part of being here in Cannes is, having conversations with people from all different organizations and backgrounds, and creating those opportunities to network and make partnerships and connections. So for me, it's really, anyone here that's interested in partnering with a Muslim woman on the podcast, that would be for me what I'm looking forward to in the next year, especially.
It's a really good question. And I never like to put a cap on it because Muslim Girl has gone places where I never even imagined. But I will say that, our philosophy is to always reach people in the way that they understand best. it's actually a philosophy that I learned from my faith in Islam. We believe that historically, all the prophets were sent to the people of the people, right? Because they knew the culture, they knew the tongue. And I approach our messaging in the same exact way. Whoever we're trying to reach, we have to do so in the way that they best are able to receive that message. And we've come such a long way, but there's still so much further for us to go. And I say that very symbolically, not just literally in different languages, which is, of course, on the agenda, inshallah, but also just in terms of the types of media that we've expanded into, the types of industries we've broken into, the spaces where we've broken those glass ceilings. There's still a way to go. And we've said since day one at Muslim Girl that we are going to make it impossible for anyone to have a conversation about us without us. And we've gotten so far to that goal, and there's still, I'm excited for what comes next as we continue pushing that forward.
Awesome. Well, I think that's it for our round of questions. I want to thank you again, Amani, for joining me on the stage today. Incredible conversation with you always.
Thank you so much. Honored to be here as always. And wow, I'm wishing you all like a wonderful closeout to 2023 Cannes Lions, because what a week it's been. And I hope that, especially with all of the inspiring conversations we've been having in this space at Inkwell, we've all taken something away from here that we're going to carry with us until next year. Back at the beach.